Thanks for joining us yet again. It's another live stream here on Royal LePage Binder Real Estate's Facebook page. Very happy to have you along for the ride. And today it's Friday, so that means it is Ask the Experts. This is a show where we dive deep into our wide array of experts from across home renovation, across industries that have direct correlations to real estate here in Windsor, Essex. These are some of our preferred suppliers with Royal LePage Binder Real Estate, and we are so happy to have them on the show and to talk a little bit about what you need to know as a homeowner or a potential homeowner here in the Windsor, Essex area. So my guests today are a fully integrated team of property restoration, renovation, and really renewal professionals. They do everything from basement foundation repairs to mold, asbestos concerns, and they take all the difficult jobs. And they're one of our preferred suppliers at Royal LePage Binder and renovation experts that can really put it all back together for you. So joining me on the live stream today, we've got a couple of gentlemen. We've got Corey Marchildon, who is the expert of waterproofing and foundation repair, and Steve Asher, who is the resident expert on mold and asbestos, and as well as insurance-related restorations claims. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Well, it's always good to talk to some of the guys who are on the front line working this, again, from Supreme Restoration, because what a wild ride the last 5 years have been. Now, to give some context here on the show, and I think a lot of people who are watching the program will know that Windsor in the last 5 to 6 years has had some significant weather events. We lived in South Walkerville back in 2017. We just purchased a home right behind Met Hospital, and I just finished my basement. And this was about August, the end of August of 2017. And I think you guys would know this. That's when we had that torrential, quote unquote, 1 in 100 years, which really happened like every other month, but 1 in 100 year rain that backed up the sewer systems and the water systems here in Windsor, Essex. My basement was flooded. I think most people in South Walkerville and really in South Windsor too, their basements were flooded. And that includes crawl spaces. And when it comes to waterproofing, and I'm going to throw this out here, let's talk about the crawl space aspect of this too. A lot of the homes here in the Windsor, Essex area, they have those crawl spaces because they're somewhat of an older home. Why would you bother dealing with something like that that's hidden in a crawl space? You want to take this away?
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to answer that, Steve?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So with the crawl space, really all a crawl space is a tiny basement. So you can imagine, if your basement was full of dirt and muddy and mucky, you probably wouldn't be comfortable with that. And it's the same reason why you shouldn't be comfortable with that in your crawl space as well. All the air that's breathed in your home is actually coming from your crawl space or basement. So if it's an unhealthy crawl space, it's not an unhealthy home.
Why would they have? I mean, a lot of these older homes here, when you take a look at it, Corey, I mean, they have these areas. I mean, was this something that they just built back then to have a crawl? Like, was it something, I wouldn't think you see these in a lot of newer homes nowadays, crawl spaces. It's just something that was with the older homes?
Well, yeah. So some homes now, they're slab on grade. They still make homes with crawl spaces. But sometimes, but let's say, for example, in the ground where you're building your home, if there's high water saturation in the ground already, you can't dig a basement because you're literally going to just build a big puddle. It could be a puddle forever. So you can only dig down a few feet. So instead of going slab on grade, they'll put a crawl space in because that way you'll have access to your plumbing and your electrical and things like that. So crawl spaces are not as common as what they used to be, but they are still relatively popular. But in the old days, most of the time they did a crawl space because they didn't have the ability to dig. They wouldn't have the big machines to dig, and it would save a bunch of money, right?
And you think about those dark areas where, again, there's the dirt. There is some moisture in there that can lead to decay. Or when you're talking about wood, right, Steve? This could talk about mold and fungus as well. I mean, these are all things that when you take a look at waterproofing your crawl space and using a system, this is something essential. So I guess, why do you do the way you do it?
So crawl spaces are interesting places. They're places where people typically don't go or don't want to go. And often they will keep the crawl space hatch just locked and pretend like nothing's down there and everything's okay. A lot of the times we get called out when the house is going up for sale and there's a home inspection and somebody physically goes down into the crawl space and sees a whole bunch of problems. Some of these problems could be moisture, like you were talking about, which can lead to serious problems such as mold. Oftentimes in older homes, there's asbestos that can be in the crawl space. So it is an area of the house that you do have to pay attention to, and it is an important part of your house. So the way that Corey and his team seal the crawl spaces, which he will get into more specifics on, is very important part of your home.
Now, Corey, I've seen people post pictures of their crawl spaces as well. Tell me about the process that you use. Tell me about the materials that you use to make sure that that crawl space is, I guess, usable and is really safe once you folks are done fixing it.
Okay, so number one is before anybody goes in there, you need to make it healthy. This is where Steve and his team comes in. A lot of times people call it because their crawl space, it's a nasty crawl space because they can smell it upstairs. What they're smelling is organic material decaying, right? So Steve's team would go in and treat all the mold and make it healthy before we go in and actually repair the crawl space. And that process is first we determine how much water we're going to have to move in there, because some crawl spaces are really, really wet. They might need a drainage system around the entire exterior perimeter. So you put in a drainage system, you put in a sump pump, so now you got a mechanical way to pump the water out. You install your liner, and for us, for our company, we use a little bit different system than the average crawl space person or waterproofer. We'll install a drainage matting, and we'll seal that up. So it's about a 25 mil plastic, and it has a dimple on it so the water can run under. But it's not just so the water can run under, it's so when the wet air wants to come up, it'll act as a thermal break. So the wet air will come up and drop back down, and will stay underneath that drainage matting. And then on top of that, we'll add a 20 mil liner. It's nice and bright and white. It's made of polyethylene, tear resistant, and that will prevent the water vapor from coming up from the crawl space into the living space. So when it's encapsulated, we'll seal up all outside air. We do not want to ventilate the crawl space with the outside air. A lot of the old time engineers will say, "Oh, you got to ventilate it with the outside air." Here in Canada, the outside air is very rarely ever healthy. Usually always high relative humidity, full of pollen, full of mold out there. So we seal out all outside air. And we usually do that with spray foam. So we make a nice, airtight, healthy space that has conditioned air in it. If there's ductwork in there, we use the ductwork to circulate the air. And if not, we'll put in a special machine to keep the air circulated. That's how we create a healthy crawl space.
And turnaround time for something like that, Corey, if somebody's looking to get that done to their home, especially before putting that on the market, how long does that usually take, or is that a case-by-case basis?
It's a case-by-case basis. Like we do a lot of projects here in Windsor, and we have a lot of preferred vendors. So, like for example, for yourself, if you needed one done right away, we can move some things around and get it done. But the average lead time, by the time you call in with the problem, we'll get an inspector out there usually within a week. But if it's a rush, it could be within 24 hours. And after the inspector's out there, usually within 12 to 24 hours, you have a written estimate. If you agree with the written estimate, the average lead time is 4 to 8 weeks, but we could do it faster. Like for your clients, if they wanted to list the house right away and they needed it clean, so it doesn't scare off any buyers, we make it happen.
And I'd imagine too, once you're able to put in your methods and the product that you use to sort of encapsulate the crawl space too, there's small enough spaces, but I guess it becomes usable, right? I mean, you can use it for storage. It does add that kind of sense of, hey, I've got a little bit of extra space now. I've got something that's usable. I can store the Christmas tree there. I won't have to worry about it.
Yep, absolutely. So if the height is there, a lot of people will use it for storage. And that's one of the reasons why you want to go with a high-end material when you are encapsulating your crawl space. Building code says 6 mil. Some people use 10 mil. But as you can imagine, that's not very thick. So you'd wear it out going in and out. So when you use a 20 mil reinforced liner, you could do that. You could slide a canoe in and out. You can do it for the next 20 years. And we cover it with a warranty. So if for whatever reason, if it did tear, we'd go back to fix it.
The other part about having a thicker liner is any service people that need to go down there, they'll be thanking you. So if a plumber has to go into the crawl space, they're not crawling around in mud and feces for rodents, and they're able to slide around and get to the problem and fix it. So it might save you some money too, because the plumber is going to be able to finish the job a lot quicker.
I didn't think of that too. They've got to go underneath the house and they've got to trudge through God knows what's underneath there, especially if it's been there for a couple of decades. Hey, we're chatting with the guys from Supreme Restoration. Happy to have them on our Ask the Expert show. My name is Arms Bumanlag from Royal LePage Binder Real Estate. We're very happy to continue to showcase some of our preferred suppliers here on our live stream. Let's switch gears here, guys, and talk a bit more about waterproofing in terms of sump pumps and battery backups. And, some people might buy a home or a newer home, and they've got sort of the sump pump that came along with the house, right? Why would somebody look at upgrading their sump pump?
So I have a good story for you. We have a client of ours who bought a very nice home in LaSalle, and he had the home for about 6 months, and all of a sudden his basement flooded. So they called us. We was going through insurance. They called us, and we discovered that it was a sump pump failure. When we opened up the lid to find the sump pump, we found that for this $1 million house, the only thing that was protecting the basement was a $75 sump pump from Canadian Tire. And we just kind of scratched our head and said, like, this is kind of crazy. Like, there's no other part of your structure that you would want to protect your house with such a small, inexpensive device. You would think that you would want to get something that you can be confident in that will protect you during heavy rainstorms.
And it's not, I guess it's peace of mind, right? When you have an upgraded sump pump, because I think, and gents, you can talk a little bit more about this, but generally speaking, over the last, again, 5 to 6 years, you take a look at what happened back in 2017 in August about those torrential rains. We're getting heavier rain, more of that rain that's overloading the system could tend to back up into people's homes. So to have a decent sump pump, like you said, it's worth its weight in gold.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And having a backup sump pump is also very important, because if that one sump pump does fail, you know that you have a secondary pump, and an alarm will go off so that you're alert to, like, the primary pump's down, you're on your secondary pump. Maybe you should get to the store and get a new pump, or call somebody like us to come and help you.
Now, if somebody doesn't have a sump pump pit or a pump to their current home, is that possible to add that to have peace of mind? Steve, did you want to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we do recommend having a place where you can mechanically pump out excess water away from your foundation, on every house. Corey and his team install them all the time. Corey, why don't you go into a little bit more of the specifics of that?
Well, the points you just made, they're 100% accurate, and it's correct. But the reality is, especially in Windsor, if you don't have a sump pump, the city of Windsor will actually pitch in and help you pay for a sump pump. So even the city prefers you having a mechanical way of getting the water out of your basement, in the case of a catastrophe, or at least tying in your existing drain to a sump pump, to take some pressure off of the systems that they currently use to drain wastewater away from the houses. So to retrofit a sump pump, even if you don't have a wet basement, makes perfect sense. If you have a wet basement, it's kind of a no-brainer. It could be done, right? But in my opinion, and maybe Steve and we're a little biased, is every single home should have a sump pump. Every single one.
I think it's just peace of mind too, right? It's one of those things where you don't have to necessarily, worry as much when you do get the heavier rains, or wondering what's going on with your basement if we are getting those torrential rains as well. And I remember a few years back too. Again, the city was offering those rebates, right? They were offsetting that. Corey, those are still ongoing, and still, or no, those are done.
They are still ongoing. I'm not sure how much longer it's going to go on. But it is a pretty successful program. We use them all the time. Very rarely do we ever get denied a permit for them. The permit process is relatively easy, and it will pay up to $1,750 to have your sump pump installed.
Oh, that's pretty good. That is pretty good. And it's, again, safeguarding your home from any kind of backups in regards to some stormwater or even sewer water. We're talking to the guys from Supreme Restoration here on Ask the Experts, part of Royal LePage Binder's Ask the Experts series. They are some of our preferred suppliers with our brokerage right across Windsor, Essex, and they'd love to hear from you. If you are buying or selling a home and want that peace of mind, you can contact them through our website as well. Check them out today. One thing I wanted to talk about too, when you talk about waterproofing a basement, and Corey, this is a big thing. I mean, if you're doing an inspection on a house or you're bringing a client through a house and they want to take a look at a basement and they start to see some cracks in the foundation, they start to see some of the effervescence that's on the wall too. Are those signs that, you know, there is a leak, there could be a leak?
Yeah, there is. So the efflorescence on the wall, it's just what's left over when water has made its way through. So it could have been just condensation, or just, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a wet basement. You need an interior drainage system, but you should have an inspection for sure.
Some of the bigger issues too, why people are getting in, I guess, water in the basement is taking a look at the grading around the house. That seems to be a big issue. Is that a good indication that they may have some problems down the road?
Oh yeah. What happens is over the years, like a neighbor will build up their lawn, and then you'll build up yours, and then next thing you know, it will be crowned the wrong way. And that's definitely a no-no. Downspouts, you know, it could be 6 to 8 feet away from your house. Get some good grading around your house. And after it rains, you know, when you walk around, if you see pockets of water sitting right beside your foundation, your exterior waterproofing system or your damp proofing system, it's meant to handle some water, but over time it starts to fail. And the more that you ask it to accept the water, the more chances it will fail. So the more you can get the water away from your house, the better.
And that includes perhaps maybe some eavesdrops not being connected too, right? I mean, that has a big factor into it, Corey.
Yeah, that's a lot of basements when I go into that are wet. The damage is already done, so they'll still need waterproofing, but it was caused because, you know, for example, when you cut your grass, a lot of people find that downspout a pain in the rear, so they remove it. But what they don't realize is they're kind of deteriorating the corner of that house, and the drainage system that's, you know, 7 feet below the dirt, that's getting saturated with that water, it clogs up in that section. So now, even when you put the downspout back, it's still a problem. So that whole section of drainage tile has now failed because it tried to take on too much water over here. So no matter what, even if it's inconvenient, keep those downspouts on.
And a good rule of thumb too, and a good tip is during a heavy rainstorm is to just put on your rain jacket and your rain boots and do a full walk of the perimeter of your house. And just keep an eye on where water's pooling around your house. And if you see any pools of water, that could mean that you have a problem or one that might start.
I think that's great advice too for folks that may not necessarily realize. I mean, these little problems I think build up over time, right? It's if you're not really keeping an eye on the grading around your home, if you're not taking a look at some of the cracks that may be in your basement, or even having that peace of mind piece as well with these sump pumps and the battery backups that are available. That's why we decided to bring the experts on the show with us today. We've got Corey and Steve from Supreme Restoration on, and we're talking about waterproofing, but I also wanted to talk about something that is in a lot of homes, and that is asbestos. And Steve, could you tell us a little bit more about asbestos, specifically the dangers, and if somebody has an older home or even a home that they are looking at purchasing, why should they care?
Yeah, asbestos was a building material that builders put in a lot of homes, and then they realized that it could be a health hazard because of the way that the fibers are, the way that it's a natural fiber, could get lodged into your lungs, and over time people develop cancer. Now, any house built right before the 90s, there is a potential that asbestos was used in the home in some building material. It's not dangerous unless you are disturbing it or starting a renovation project where you're going to be physically removing that material.
So if I'm going to start a renovation project, or if I'm looking at a home, or I'm walking through with one of our Royal LePage Binder real estate agents on a home I'm looking to purchase, or maybe I just want to figure out, hey, wait a second, maybe I purchased this home a few years back, but this was actually built in the 1970s. Should we be looking at what? Drywall? What about some of the ceilings or even floor tiles? Would they have that in it as well?
Yeah, asbestos is tricky because it's microscopic and you really don't know for sure if something contains asbestos or not unless it's tested. And the way of testing is physically take a sample of it and send it away to the lab. They look at it under a microscope and determine if there's asbestos in it or not. So all those items you described, drywall, ceiling texture, floor tiles, possibly could contain asbestos.
What about it was sort of a design choice way back when, but I remember my first apartment I had this. It was the popcorn ceilings. Would that have it as well?
Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. When the builders built the house, different subcontractors in different trades use different formulas for their popcorn ceiling texture, and some of them added asbestos to it because it actually did give it some more rigidity and it did do a good job for a building material. The only downside is we found out later is that it could cause cancer.
So if somebody suspects that they have this in their home, or they're looking to do a project to renovate or build an addition, or even again do something simple as perhaps taking down a non-load bearing wall, how can you guys help them out?
So we can come to their property and see what their project is and what they're looking to achieve. And then we can guide them on what materials could be suspect for asbestos. And we can help them by taking some samples and bringing them to the lab and then calling them back in about a week to tell them if it's something that they have to worry about or if it's something that has no asbestos at all.
Awesome stuff. Do you guys get a lot of calls about that, especially around renovation season? People just worried about asbestos, or even some of our agents giving you a call and saying, we might have that here.
Yeah, most of the time we probably get 2 or 3 calls a day about that, where there's just a homeowner thinking about doing a project and they just want to know, like, is this something that we need to test or is this something we don't need to test? When there's any doubt, my advice is it's worth just testing to be safe, because you don't want to contaminate your home with asbestos dust, and then it becomes a very expensive process to get it all cleaned up.
And another thing I wanted to talk to you guys about too, going back to basements and dangerous items and things that we may not take as seriously, and it's something that can sort of creep up over time too, or as little as 48 hours, is mold, right? This is a big issue too. And Steve, what should our viewers understand about mold?
Mold is something that is normal in the environment, and mold is very important. It basically is what biodegrades everything around us. Without mold, we would have layers and layers of leaves just stacked up every fall because they would never disappear. The only problem is mold is not good inside of your house on building materials, because you don't want your building materials to degrade. And also mold is an allergen, and there are some types of mold that are quite dangerous.
So again, this is something that you said, Steve, this is everywhere, right? Indoors, it's outdoors. Once it's in the air, this can go into the AC system, the heating system, right? It can even get on pets, can get on clothing as well. So we should not necessarily try to remove it ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when it's inside your home. Large amounts of mold growing, for example, on drywall in a wet, leaky basement. It's something that you definitely want to stay on top of and take a look and make sure that water isn't coming in through your basement, or you don't have a leaky set of taps that's constantly dripping. Call us right away if you find mold, and we can put together a process for you that will remove it safely. Basically, what we do is we create containment chambers, and we use HEPA filtered air purifiers while we're removing the mold, just to protect and prevent cross-contamination to other areas.
And I'd imagine too, Steve, when you address mold, a sure as heck tail sign that you've got mold in the house is that smell, right? It's that musty, smell that you might catch a whiff of wafting from the basement. That's a good indication that you've got a mold problem.
Yeah, a lot of our customers, that's the first thing they do. They call, they say, hey, we got a musty smell coming and we can't figure out where it's coming from. Sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. It depends on what time of the day it is and the temperature outside, and then they just get a waft of a musty smell. At that point, a lot of times we advise them to take a look in the basement and see if there's any areas where water could be coming in. Is there any discoloration on the bottom of the drywall? Are all your plumbing, is it working properly? Do you have leaks? And then sometimes we can help them find where the source would be. Other times we go out and help them with that process and pinpoint where that musty smell would be coming from. And that's just through our expertise and our knowledge of the hot spots on where mold would grow. And then we also have devices like we have a moisture detector. So even if you can't see the mold, we can run a moisture detector on the perimeter of the basement walls and see if we're finding any spots where moisture be coming in. Because mold needs moisture in order to grow. If there's no moisture, mold really won't be growing. And that's why Supreme has a waterproofing division as well, because a lot of times the clients that we go to, we discover there's mold in the basement, and then we remove the mold, and then the clients, now what? Now we say, let's prevent it from ever coming back. And that's where Corey and his team come in and do the waterproofing for us.
So with a few minutes left to go here, guys, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you about some of these issues that people might find themselves in when it is a home that they own or a home that they're looking to purchase too. On behalf of Supreme Services, what do you want people to know about the importance of getting these items addressed prior to listing in today's market? I mean, I'd imagine like if it's not necessarily just kind of whitewashing the wall and, you know, hoping the problem goes away. This is something that you're going to want to address right off the cuff, right, Corey? Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, going into a basement that smells musty, or if there's big black dots on the walls, that's a red flag for any buyer. And you don't need a qualified home inspector to tell you that there's a problem. And a homeowner, somebody's going to have to deal with the problem either way. If it's the person that's selling the house or the person buying, somebody's going to have to fix this, or it's just the problem's just going to get worse.
And it's not just flood and water damage, mold removal. Just a quick plug too, because I wanted to talk about fire damage, right? I mean, that's something that also that you guys take care of. If it's you know, heaven forbid, something of that nature, that's something that you can help folks out with as well. Is that a big part of your business, a smaller part of your business, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing a number of fire damage restorations a year. Fire damages are a little bit trickier. They're much more complicated than just a simple basement renovation. Typically, a fire damage affects most of the house or all of the house, and sometimes it has a structural component where engineers are required, or other times it's as simple as cleaning soot and repainting a room. Our expertise really will help guide the decision making and what's the most cost effective and the best solution for your circumstances.
One last question before I let you guys go, and thanks for joining us on Ask the Experts as well. What is it like working with Royal LePage Binder Real Estate and some of the reps that we work with you guys and sort of the relationship that we've built up with Supreme Services?
Yeah, we really appreciate working with them. We like when they send us leads our way when one of their clients needs help. We're happy to help them. We do appreciate that they do trust us in our opinions or in our professionalism to help their clients and make sure that we get them on the right track so that the sale of the house, at the end of the day, everybody's happy. The buyer makes sure that they get a safe and healthy home, and the seller makes sure that they're selling a safe and healthy home and that they're getting the top dollar for their property.
Steve, Corey, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate the time. Keep up the great work, and thanks for being some of our preferred suppliers with Royal LePage Binder Real Estate. Appreciate the time, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, and have a great long weekend.
You too, guys. That is Steve and Corey from Supreme Restoration Services. They are some of our preferred suppliers and partners with Royal LePage Binder Real Estate. So again, if you are listing a home, if you are looking at a home in today's market and it has a basement, you may want to contact these folks and say, hey, wait a second, we want to take a look at potential water damage. We want to take a look at the sump pump situation. We want to take a look at whether or not there's mold in the basement, or even getting rid of some of the crawl space issues. Not only will your new buyer thank you for it, but perhaps some of the service folks who have to crawl underneath there will thank you for it as well. So you can find out more information on their website, supremerestoration.ca. We appreciate their time on today's Ask the Experts. We'll be back with more experts from our preferred vendor list in the next couple of weeks. So we hope you found this informative, and we appreciate your time. Thanks for watching. Have a great long